Greetings, M Squared here, and we are going to talk about some more about factoring trinomials. So in your homework you had basically 4 different types, so we're going to go over those types. So the first type you had in your homework, there was a greatest common factor that you had to pull out first. So remember, the first step in factoring is always to pull out that greatest common factor. Here I see that they're all even. These two are 8. So I check to see if 8 goes into that. 8 goes into 9 once with 1 left over, and it does go into 16. So that makes it go into there 12. So if I factor out an 8, I'm left with this. So this is a trinomial with a equal to 1. Those are the easiest kind. Sometimes we say we don't use the box for those. But remember, you still have that 8 out there. We're going to figure out this using our box. Some of you already know how to do that without using the box, but we always put ax squared here. We always put c here. And then we find 2 factors of ac, which is negative 12, because a was 1, that add together to be 1. And that would be 4 and negative 3. They multiply to get negative 12, but when you add them, you get 1. So we put a 4x here and a negative 3x here. And then we distribute out. It's kind of like just backwards distributive property. We're going to take the greatest common factor of each column and each row. So greatest common factor between x squared and 4x is x. The greatest common factor, when they're both negative, we're going to pull out a negative. That's negative 3. And this way is an x. And this column is a 4. And then those become our binomials. So we have an x plus 4, x minus 3. This is our answer. Remember, it doesn't matter if the x minus 3 or the x plus 4 goes first. That's interchangeable, but you need to have all 3 parts. Okay, so the next kind you had where a was not 1, but there was no greatest common factor. So we're going to look at that. First, we're going to find 2 factors of ac. Remember, a is 3, c is 2, that add up to 5. So we have 1 and 6 and 2 and 3, and 2 and 3 add up to 5. If it had said subtract, if that was a negative, then we could have used 1 and 6, because 6 minus 1 is 5. But 2 plus 3 is 5. That one sometimes is tricky because kids mess that up because they see the 5 either way. All right, so we're going to use our little box. So we put a 3x squared here because that's ax squared. We put our c here. And then we put our 2 factors. So we got a 3x and a 2x. And then we take out the greatest common factor. 1, x, 3x, and 2. And so our answer is x plus 1 and 3x plus 2. You can always check it using FOIL or distributive property, whichever way you like to multiply those back out. X times 3x is 3x squared. The inners and outers, 3x plus 2x is definitely 5x, and 1 times 2 is 2. So you can always check it out. Checking is super important because then you can make sure you got it right. Okay, so another kind that you saw had a greatest common factor, but it didn't have a number greatest common factor, just a variable one. You'll see that there's a y in each term. So I'm going to pull out a y and hopefully remember to write y instead of x. And so here is my new trinomial that I'm going to use in my box. Remember, my answer is going to look like this. I'm trying to find those 2 binomials. So I put my ax squared here. Notice I don't use the original. I use the trinomial after the greatest common factor. That's super important. It's much easier to do it that way. So I have those 2, and now I have to find 2 factors of ac, which in this case would be negative 24, that add up to negative 10. So 1 and 24, one of them has to be negative. Since that's negative, the bigger one would have to be 2 times negative 12, and there it is, because 2 minus 12 is negative 10. So I put my negative 12y and my 2y in my box, and then I take out the greatest common factor. Here it's 1, here it's 4y, here it's 2y, and here it's negative 3. And then I do 2y minus 3 for the top part, and 4y plus 1 for the bottom. And then I check. You can check in here or there. 2y times 4y is definitely y squared. Negative 12y plus 2y gets me my negative 10y. And negative 3, when I multiply those, gets me my negative 3. Okay, last kind that you'll have in your homework is where you see there's no greatest common factor. That has an x, this doesn't. This has a y, that doesn't. But this one has both. So it's a little bit different when you have an x squared and a y squared. So we're going to put our 4x squared here and our 14y squared there. And what this means is that you're going to have an x and a y in each in each parenthesis, and you're also going to have an xy in these two boxes because you're going to get an x times a y and an x times a y. So the number parts, the 4 times 14 would go here. 4 times 14, that is 56. And then what goes here is 15. Well, when I ever, thinking of 56, we can go 1 times 56, 2 times 28. But when I think of 56, for some reason, I always think of 7 and 8. So I would just jump to 7 and 8 and see if that works. What is 7 plus 8? It's 15. So those are our factors. But you could keep going. 3 doesn't work. 4 times 14. 5, 6, 7. You eventually get there. But I'm just saying, if you know 2 factors, just try them first, and then you don't have to go through all of them if it works. So we have a 7 and an 8 xy. So we're going to pull out the greatest common factor. That's a 7 and a y. You got to watch it in these because all of them will have a variable that come out too, because they all have variables in them. These ones, it's a 4x. This column right here, it's just an x, and this column right here, it's a 2y. So then we come over here, we have a 4x plus 7y, and we have an x plus 2y. And this becomes our beautiful answer. And we could always check it again. That gets me my 4x squared. This definitely gets me my 14y squared. And when I multiply together, I get a 7xy or yx. That doesn't really matter. Usually we do it in alphabetical order. 4x, that's times 2y is 8xy, so we get a 7xy plus an 8xy, which gets us our 15xy. Okay, so just make sure you're recognizing the different types that you see, and good luck factoring. M Squared signing out.